The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Chantel, the Marketing Exec here at Sagittarius, and I will be hosting today's webinar. Today joining me is Sagittarius CEO Paul Stephen, and he will be exploring how travel brands can create moments of magic at scale using AI. If you do have any questions for today, please submit them using the questions box within the webinar portal, and we'll endeavour to answer them at the end. So with everything said, over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Chantel. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. My name is Paul. I'm CEO at Sagittarius. This is a presentation which I find very exciting. I think as a marketer and as a technologist, we're in very exciting times at the moment. And I did this presentation back in the end of last year at the World Travel Market, and we thought it was good enough to repeat today in case you missed it. So without further ado, I'll get straight into it. I'm hoping this will only take half an hour or so hopefully that's good for you too. So I wanted to start with a little bit of history. So AI, that's what the seminar is really about. AI, though, is not really a new thing. It's been here for a while, really, but it's kind of at a new beginning. They call it now the sort of fourth industrial revolution we're apparently in. This is one of the diagrams I was able to find to illustrate that. But really, what's happened over the last few years is tech is now gathering at such a pace, and if we use this diagram, another chart I found, which is Moore's law. This is the idea that the processor speed of computers is doubling sort of for every year that goes on. It means that technology is possibly kind of moving faster than we are, and so now what's possible with technology is now probably moving faster than culturally we want to kind of keep up with. So we're now at a stage where kind of technology is in a way a little bit of we're a little bit bored of it now. Digitally, just because it's digital isn't interesting enough to us anymore, and now that's why everyone now is talking about customer first or customer centricity, and customer centricity is kind of not a new idea, but looking after a customer is as old as just the idea of retail. I grew up in a shop, and if someone came in who was a regular customer and we knew what they wanted, we kind of looked after them. We knew who they were. We knew what they liked, and we wouldn't ask them the same questions again and again. They call that personalization now, but that was what we just used to call customer service, I think, in the old days. So really, just good customer service and a good digital experience now is kind of the normal. It's normal. If we take that as our base level, if you've got good customer service and you've got a reasonable customer experience, then that's just expected, really. So now, if you want to stand out, you've got to do a bit more than that, really. In Sagittarius, we say you've got to be remarkable. A book that I read recently, which kind of inspired me a little bit to do this talk, really, was this book, The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath, and it had this great phrase that kind of jumped out at me, really: beware the soul-sucking force of reasonableness. This idea that just if you're normal or whatever, it's just boring as hell. You've got to do something that really makes you stand out a bit. And one of the examples, the point they're trying to make in this is that you do need to be a little bit remarkable now. And in order to be remarkable, you don't necessarily need to sort of completely reinvent yourself, do something completely different. You don't need to change everything, but you need to find a little sort of magical moment, a little moment that makes you stand out or makes someone go, "Oh, yeah, that was nice." Just something. It might not be a major thing. And one of the examples they highlight, actually, which I think is a great way of illustrating this, is this kind of hotel, which it's in LA, and it's called the Magic Castle Hotel. Quite frankly, it's a fairly sort of ordinary 3-star hotel. It looks lovely. It looks like a nice place to be compared to, say, here in the UK. But my point is, it's a fairly ordinary 3-star hotel. Yet on TripAdvisor, it is absolutely top of the charts. It's exponentially high on the ratings on TripAdvisor. And not because it's got amazing rooms or its location or pool, or it's nothing remarkable about that, but because it has a popsicle hotline, which for those is a lollipop for the UK people here. But yeah, a popsicle hotline where you can go and you can just go to that little red phone there. You say, bring me some lollies, and they will come out with some lollies on a tray. And people just think that is amazing. They'll also do your laundry as well for you while you're there for free. So there's a great example of where they've just created one thing. Of course, that's what everybody raves about, and then everything else, like the rooms or the normal stuff, nobody really talks about that. But what it means now is they're sort of a 5-star TripAdvisor rating. Another example I like is of just doing something little is BA. Now, we all have to watch those little videos, and BA, they started it actually for Red Nose Day, but they just kind of changed those safety videos, which nobody watched, to just something now which is amusing. I mean, they're wearing a little thin now, to be honest, but I still find them funny. But they basically took something that was already perfectly acceptable. It worked as it was, either as a hotel or as a safety video in that particular instance, and they kind of changed it a little bit and gave it a little wow moment, a little bit of magic that turned something that was a perfectly good customer experience, friction-free. And that's the point, is now we can't just do that. We've got to somehow add value or do something over and above. So that's really what I mean by a magical moment. How can you do something that just makes you stand out from the rest? And so that's what I ask you for your business. What is your popsicle hotline? What is it that sets you apart from the rest? So the problem is, okay, in reality, we can't just come up with one thing. We need to be different one things for different people, particularly if you're a larger brand and you've got a large audience and you've got a wide product range or different things that you sell. So it isn't really one thing, even though I'm trying to say you need to have one thing. The way that people sort of interact with your brand is increasing all the time too. It's not just a website or over the phone. There's so many different things. And to think of your website as just a marketing shop window or a means of self-service is probably missing the point. And now we're in a point, particularly in travel, where your sort of infrastructure of how your live chat and your analytics and your website, and then talking to your CRM, and that might be talking to some sort of reservation system or bookings engine, which is subsequently talking to a hotel or a flight provider or, I don't know, any other third party. That infrastructure is constantly growing, and that's a big challenge for us in terms of, well, how do we create magical moments when there's so many ways in which people interact with us? And there's lots of things that are coming along that's going to continue to grow that sort of the amount of data points and the ways that a customer interacts with you. And I've put on the screen here a few of the sort of various voice activated or voice what would you call them? They're voice things. Sorry, don't know what a collective for those is, but you have to accept that these things are coming, and that speech may not be something you're doing a lot with now, but as a business, we need to be building an architecture that enables for whatever's coming down the line at us, that you can connect to it and take advantage of it. But you've got to do that now, because you might not think something like speech is right for you now, but it's coming. So this is a problem. How do we scale? How do we create a relevant and meaningful customer experience at some sort of scale, where those variations and permutations mean that really doing it by yourself, by using human interaction to humans to make those changes is becoming increasingly difficult. So, and at the moment, of course, we kind of have to sort of pick our battles and try and find who our customer is. I'm using Where's Wally here to demonstrate that, but ultimately we've got all brands have got so many different types of customers. We're generally looking for that low-hanging fruit and just trying to find the 2 or 3 customer types where maybe we can justify the expense or the time involved in trying to do something personal for them or do something a bit more magical for them. So you know, even if you take that approach, you've then got to know, well, who is my, you know, using 80-20 rule, who's the 20% who I should really be focusing our time on. So this is where data and analytics is absolutely key, and this is something at Sagittarius we've been doing for a while. I've got a short video here of some of the sort of analytics we look at when we're starting to analyse customer journeys with our clients. We're looking for customer journeys that are well travelled and result in some sort of positive or negative outcome, so that we can prioritise the sort of work that we might do because of that particular customer type. Yeah, I'll switch to another screen now as well. This is a site map where we're showing the sort of journey or the most travelled journeys through a site, and we can start to look at journeys that are being used by lots of people and ending in either some sort of positive or negative outcome. The green dots on here are positive, and the size is to do with volume, etc. So we're able to then look at that and work out, well, what should we be doing first? What are the areas where we should focus our effort and money, etc. And believe me, a negative one can be just as exciting as a positive one if we can kind of turn that around. So I just thought I'd lay a foundation really here of the challenge we all have really, and ultimately this kind of raises the question: if we want to be able to create magical moments at some sort of scale, our business needs to be ready to cope with that. Well, you could do with being ready now, but you know, even if you're not ready now, what should you be trying to prioritise? So my sort of short list really of the things we need to be doing straight away, or as soon as possible anyway, is trying to get that infrastructure, all of our systems, get it down to as fewer systems as possible as we can, get as many of them integrated and talking to each other as we can, because then that data will then start to flow. And then we need to be looking at what data we are collecting and making sure we're looking after it. Obviously, we've got GDPR issues to worry about, so good data security is really important. And making sure we're collecting and analysing everything that they do. A lot of the work that we do here at Sagittarius to do with data is really kind of then taking that data and what can we use that information for? What insight is that giving us? So that's kind of normal business for us at Sagittarius, but you know, certainly for businesses in the future, everybody needs to be thinking this way. What we then give ourselves is a foundation that then, if we've got that infrastructure right, we've got the data, then machine learning can then start to look at that data that we've been looking at and take it to another level. It can start to spot sort of segments and sections of that data or particular customer journeys that as humans we're not seeing. That is the challenge now, is if you've got, you know, multiple advertising campaigns and multiple journeys through the website, and then you say, well, okay, well, what happens when this client comes from this particular campaign and then goes on this journey through the website? What happens? Whereas if they come off of this campaign, or this is their third visit to the website, what happens when they land on this page? You know, there's so many combinations and permutations that is going to become impractical to manage and moderate. So using something like machine learning will really help us then highlight where maybe as a human we should interact and look at that and say, okay, well, how can we change the UX or the design or that customer flow or whatever it might be to improve the results there. And you know, the next stage, just moving it forward, is then, well, then turning machine. There's a difference maybe between machine learning and AI as well. Okay, the machine learning is starting to highlight things to me. The artificial intelligence is when then the robots then start to suggest back to you, well, what you could be doing, or you know, based on other patterns we see elsewhere, these are the changes we might suggest. So artificial intelligence is really kind of building on the machine learning rather than something completely different. So, you know, all of that only really works if you've got the right data in place. So that's my point, really. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, the direction I think we're heading, is this is a demo of where I think we're heading. I mentioned speech earlier on, but whilst I think that has its place, it often ends up being used with a screen to present the answers. It's okay to ask something like Alexa or Google or whatever to sort of reorder something specific using your Amazon account, or, you know, tell you the weather or you know. But if you asked it show me some inspiring places to go on holiday, it's kind of going to struggle. So for me, I think conversational search using speech is as its sort of place, but it also has its limitations. But if you combine speech with typing and visual, then I think that's where we really are right now. And I think using speech with visual is probably still going to be around for a while. So conversational search is what we kind of call that, and the key word in there for me is conversation. And if you interact with a brand on the phone or in person, then that's kind of what you have. You have a conversation. A conversation is generally the most efficient way of a user or a customer achieving whatever they want to achieve or get from the brand, whatever they're trying to get from them. So, and it's also from a brand side, the best way to be able to serve that customer and give them what they need and provide that best customer service. So that's what I think. That's where I think we're heading, which is almost a sort of digital going full circle, really. And whereas at the moment, digital experiences are not really very conversational at all. They're very one way. And when we design a website, we usually have a sitemap, and this is very small. You won't be able to read it, but it just sort of illustrates the point that a website is generally a sort of a large sort of scale, just hundreds, if not thousands, of pages that effectively we're forcing the user to kind of wade through to find the sort of bit of information they need, the 3 different paragraphs that are on 3 different pages, which actually tell them the answer to kind of what they came to the website for in the first place. And of course we kind of try and make that as easy as possible. We use UX in terms of navigation systems, etc., to help them do that. But it's not really a conversation, is it? It's like sending someone into a large library of books and saying, try and find the information here in this library. Yeah, it's all there, but I've got a lot to get through to just find the little information I want. So, I raise the question, is there not a better way? So, why can't a user just sort of come onto a website, for example, and ask the question? Have a sort of virtual assistant, a bit like that sort of concierge you have in a hotel. You just ask them anything and they help you out. So this is something we've been working with, and just to sort of illustrate the point, this is a little proof of concept. So my example is, this is a client of ours, Red Carnation Hotels, and I'm making the point that, okay, at the moment you go to the Red Carnation Hotel site, it shows you a load of different hotels with pictures that you could stay at, and then of course you can drill down into each of those hotels and find out everything that's amazing about them. But actually, is there another way? I mean, this is just a proof of concept, so bear with me. So maybe it should be, okay, hello, how can I help you? Start there. So this just enables now a user to just ask questions in a much more human way, that they, and in the way they want to ask them, and then let the sort of bot do the work. Chatbots are usually just a library of stock questions and answers, or a live chat with a real human, for example. So this is different in that what we're showing here now is those usual chatbots are then just bringing all the information you kind of give it and then putting a sort of language interface on it. Now, that's one level, but what we wanted to do was say, okay, well, it's all very well feeding it with all this information. What we want to be able to do is connect that to a load of data that already exists. So I'm just going to sort of show this as a little demo now. So you can type in, it says, hi, it says hello back. So which hotels do you have? So we've just, for the purpose of this demo, okay, we've got these selection hotels. So okay, it's very interesting. So which one of these has parking, for example? So now it will just come back and share, well, it's only these 2. So which one has a spa, for example? So now just come back with the one that we want. And now I know that's the hotel that's got the information I need. I can now interact with it, call them, do whatever. I don't, and again, I'm just sort of demonstrating here. Could I sign up for a newsletter? So normally we send them to a form or whatever, but I can just do that in a conversation. So what's your first name, second name, what's your email? Okay, fine, done. So this is a much more sort of interactive way of working, and I can use pictures as well as text, as well as conversation, all in kind of one go. Now, when you start sort of working with this kind of interface, you quickly realize that the flow of the conversation is far less linear. You know, on a normal website, you start and you say, choose a hotel, and you drill down. Where, well, with this kind of conversation, you could just come in and say, hey, you know, which of your hotels accepts dogs, or you know, which, you know, have you got a room that's got sort of 2 double beds in it, or you can start from anywhere in that whole kind of journey, which is far different from the way you're kind of forced to do that if you're on a website. So, you know, during this whole conversation here, so that your customer's getting everything they need, there's no carefully, I mean, this is just a demo, but there's no carefully crafted or designed web pages like we normally have. And there's no sitemap for this. This is just all the information. You can interact with it in any way that you like. So this is, you know, for me, a much nicer, easier way. I'm sure we can make it prettier. This is just a kind of demo. So that's where I think we're going. And there's no sitemap for this. It's not pages we're designing anymore, but it's still all the same information. And the more we kind of you work with this, you realise you're designing. Well, this is Ian, who works at Sagittarius' phrase. We are designing conversations now, not destinations, as opposed to finding a way to navigate through our website, which I think is an interesting way of thinking about how we interact with the customer. It's generally a conversation. Yes, there's an endpoint. So just a little bit about how we did that now. What we achieved there by building that bot is normally you fill it up with a load of data that then you give it sort of canned responses on chatbots. But we didn't do that with that example. What we did there is now we're able to use Microsoft technology. We're able to sort of take their Azure platform, point it at the website, point at all of the pages and the content that's in the website. Additionally, we can then point it at Google Analytics. We could point it at stuff that's in their CRM. We can point it at the stuff that's in their res system, for example. And it can just take all of that data. And now when you ask it a question, it can use all of the combined information it's got and make an informed response. And that is magical, because now, you know, whatever changes on either our website, CRM, or in our res system or whatever, that AI engine, that machine learning engine, has got access to all of that data, and that is amazing. And that means you're not having to update everything quite like you would with a website. So this is just sort of an example of the journey that we've been on at Sagittarius. We've had to sort of completely rethink the kind of skills that we need. We obviously we've got all sorts of skills at Sagittarius, and we used to have people in terms of UX and design, but now, you know, in terms of skills that we're building out, we've got business analysts who are looking at what does a customer need. You've got the data itself, so you've got data analysts and data scientists. You need to be more strategic about how you use that data, and then the element of AI itself, just looking at the suggestions that come through, and then that feeds through into UX and design. So there's all sorts of skills that we're having to use, and at the moment we're using Microsoft's platform to do this, the Microsoft Azure platform, which has got various pillars to it. It's got speech recognition, language recognition, all sorts of different data analysis tools like Power BI, and together with the skills that we have and the knowledge we have of the industry, that is what gives us the ability to create magic, as I'm saying on this slide. So that's just a short presentation of how I think everyone needs to be planning for how they can improve the customer experience, add value to it, add magic using AI. And that is the end of my short presentation.
Lovely, thank you, Paul. That was very insightful. I'm sure everyone online will agree. We've had a couple of questions, so let's just dive straight in with those. So our first one is, getting all our systems connected is going to take a while. It could take years. So what should or could we be doing now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a common issue, really, that some of what I'm showing here, and when I was showing that sort of diagram of all the interconnected systems, that there are so many things you could do, but the reality is you don't need to do them all at the same time, and you can build up. The beauty of things like the Microsoft Azure Cognitive Services Suite is you can just take a piece of your system and get it analysing the data that's in there and giving you insights straight from there. It's very accessible. You're only paying for it by the amount of data that you use or the amount of calls that you use. So it's a very cheap thing to start embracing even now, even if you haven't got all of your things connected. Again, I mean, that's looking at machine learning and AI. It doesn't matter if you're just looking at improving customer service or personalization. There are always other things that can be kind of bolted on top. But really, if you want that full, consistent customer experience and having a proper 360 view, the more you can connect things up sooner, the better.
Okay. So just
sorry, I'm not sure I answered the question properly there. I just, in terms of what should you do first, I think getting data and analytics and understanding what's really going on in your website is probably the thing people should already be doing. And I don't mean just look at Google Analytics. That just tells you where you're winning or what page views or how many people are coming. You've got to really drill a bit deep to look at customer journeys and what trends or are going on that site to really have some insight into what's going on. And rarely do we come across a customer who's really drilling deep enough.
Okay.
And this will be working with us, obviously.
So just one other question for you, Paul. Who looks after the chatbot, checks it, and knows that it knows everything that it's talking about?
So the chatbot, as I said, compared to sort of live chat, things like that, where you've given it a load of information or a load of canned responses, and or a person needs to be sort of on the other end of it all the time so that you can answer the questions. This is just feeding off of data that you already have that exists. Now, there is a certain amount of training, as they call it, that you do to sort of pick up your language and some of the, and you can sort of pre-program it for particular responses, etc. But it actually is really, really low maintenance. So yes, you can moderate it and you can look at it and train it and improve it. But the reality is it almost does that a bit itself as well. That's the AI element of it. If it finds that by asking, you know, if it's getting repeatedly asked similar questions and it gets, you know, gives an answer that then gets the same repeated question, it would obviously improve the way it answered that question to reduce or improve the experience for the end user. So it doesn't require much. You obviously can test it and train it, and there's all sorts of tools on the back end that help you do that. I mean, I'm just talking about the Microsoft Azure Lewis framework when I'm talking about that, but they're all similar but different. The different ones that are available.
Okay, well, that's everything for today. If you would like to contact Paul, please feel free to use his details that are on the screen. I will be following up with you all with an email that includes the link to the audio from today, as well as a link to Paul's slides. So I'd just like to say thank you, Paul, and thank you to everyone that attended today.
Thanks, Chantal, and thank you everybody for listening.